Leading to conclusions. Our episode opens with Miss Bliss saying they are now deep into the study of the Great Civil War. But last episode they were talking about the Great Depression. So that means they just about covered 100 years of U.S. history, as if they were all on a runaway time travel into time like Bill and Ted, but cornier.
The cold open is basically just I put quotes around this word, is basically just a joke. Miss Bliss is teaching the class about the Civil War. She was going to show them a movie, but it showed up with all of the film loose and pulled out because this is back when movies were on film.
Do we think Zack did that?
Probably.
Right.
Well, no, because I feel like Zack's the kind of guy that would prefer a movie in class.
Yeah.
But did they have nudity in the movie? He could have been going through it to isolate the film.
Frame by frame.
But Zack seemed to be under the impression that by destroying the movie, he'd be able just not to have class at all.
Well, that's true, which is, like, not how class works,
Yeah.
but Zack's also kind of dumb.
He's a young puppy. He doesn't know anything.
I liked when she was talking about when the country was torn in half. Like when we were trying to pick between Bernie and Hillary. Or Trump and anyone but Trump.
Half the way the country did during the Civil War, and the way Miss Bliss map does hilariously when she goes to pull it down. And that's our cold open.
Well, it's interesting because it was just in a real abrupt... Sometimes it feels like they just cut the scene abruptly, and then they do the opening credits, and then they pick up right where they cut it. But I was like, is this actually like a joke about funding? School funding?
Yeah, I feel like it is, but they don't say the joke. They just have jank-ass shit.
Well, but then they actually follow up on it. Like, I was impressed that there was actually, like, there was thought for this shit.
I was not impressed at any point in this episode.
I'm easily impressed based on what's come before.
We also should mention that Miss Bliss was talking about how during the Civil War, brothers fought brothers, fathers fought sons, mothers fought daughters. And then Mikey said that's just a typical weekend at home, so he comes from a broken home. That doesn't sound like a great place to live.
His life's fucked up. That's why he disappeared.
Yeah. Oh, see, it even gets darker.
He's got, like, smoking on the train tracks.
Yeah.
Well, it's probably his parents probably split up. Well, I'd say his parents split up and he went to live across the country with one half of them, but actually everybody else just moved away from him. So
yeah.
Do you think his parents split up because his mullet isn't as good as AC Slater's?
They saw AC Slater and like, that should have been our son.
I mean, but whose parents haven't said that?
That's true. His mullet's finer, and his Italianness is even more finely etched.
Tina and Miss Bliss are trying to convince Mr. Belding to give them a bigger budget to buy new supplies, but like usual, he ignores the request.
Lady Tina is her name. I almost refuse to remember it. She's gonna have to end up painting with makeup and bong water.
Yep.
Pretty much.
And
then she wants paint. Miss Bliss, meanwhile, would like a globe and an encyclopedia. And while those are certainly valid educational materials, I do kind of feel like the art teacher getting paint should have priority over, like, a supplemental item like a globe. Like Miss Bliss can teach history without a globe, but it's going to be hard for Tina to teach painting without paint.
Well, I will say, though, that in junior high, asking for acrylic paint is a pretty big ask. Like, you ask for, like, watercolor. Acrylic paints are, like, a tube of acrylic paints, like, $8 to $12. So.
Well, Belding's solution to all of these requests is for the teachers to fill out a requisition.
Yeah, requisition form.
He loves the requisition forms, doesn't he?
He has a major Peter Boners for requisition forms.
Well, remember before, requisition forms were a euphemism. So I think what he's saying is, why don't you fill out your requisition forms and we'll see what supplies you get.
He's saying that...
Wow, are all of her educational materials made by the company of ASCO?
When he finds a letter from a different school in her mailbox, he panics thinking she might be interested in transferring. Consequently, he decides to start giving Miss Bliss some of the things that she's been asking for.
Who were the teachers? Are they alive? Are they ghosts?
Presumably they're still, we find out they're writing Miss Bliss, so presumably they're still alive.
Could be a ghostwriter.
Or
it's Ghostwriter.
It is the Ghostwriter.
We don't know where he came from. He just showed up one night.
What is that thing?
He's not an alien.
What is he?
We think he might be a ghost.
Be serious. He wants to be friends with us.
In chemistry class, the kids learn that they're going to dissect living frogs for the next project. While most of the class is excited for this opportunity, Nikki is deeply concerned.
So, one is I was just surprised to see another teacher in class. It was the first time they used the classroom for more than one classroom. So that was weird.
Oh, and did you notice that they pulled the original, the OG Saved by the Bell trick of it's just Miss Bliss's classroom with everybody facing the other way? Yeah, okay.
So then, it's interesting because this show is all about this teacher, Miss Bliss, and who she is, as well as they can flesh out her character, which is not very well, but they try to make her a three-dimensional character, and then they go in the complete opposite direction. This is sort of the start of that, where we get this total cartoon, non-human teacher, and he's not a hit on the show. Like, even his jokes don't land, even with the live studio audience.
Yeah.
And yet he seems to set this precedent for what every teacher will be like from here on out.
Yeah, you can tell they're still working on it because he doesn't have the gimmick yet. He's just kind of a kooky.
He's not disabled.
Yeah, he needs a disability, aka gimmick.
Yeah.
I was being charitable, but yes, he's not differently abled in some way. But you can sort of see the template for that classic Saved by the Bell teacher there.
Is this the first teacher besides Miss Bliss that we've had in the Bliss?
And Tina.
Yeah, but have we been to her class?
Nope.
She's just a teacher quote.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, she's an art teacher. She doesn't get her own class.
Art teachers are teachers quote.
Yeah.
I don't like him. He's awful. He's like a little scientist. He's like spooky, and he's like, we're gonna cut the frogs and fuck them. And I just think it's distasteful.
It's weird that he wants to fuck the frogs.
Yeah.
What's really weird to me is that the frogs are alive.
Yeah.
Like, so are these kids supposed to kill the frogs?
Well, all we ever see is a box of frogs.
But we hear them riveting.
Wow, these students are really pumped up about ending life. I'm just glad not every school is about as homicidal as the school in E.T.
Next scene, we are back in the boring Sisqualus cafeteria. And Tina and Miss Bliss and Mr. Morton are bemoaning requisition forms. And then Mr. Belding suddenly shows up bearing a globe. Miss Bliss gets a globe, but Mr. Morton, who's apparently Dr. Frankenstein, didn't get the lightning rods he wanted
I don't even know
to
what that
reanimate dead tissue with.
That's really bizarre. That's the other thing is, like, that's a very later Saved by the Bell joke. Like, that's not a Good Morning Miss Bliss joke.
Yeah, it's one of those where he says you're not going to get your lightning rods, and at first you could just take it as a joke, like he's just way too into science and doesn't realize the dangers that like lightning could pose to like teaching it to kids or whatever. And then they go the next step further, where no, he wants them to reanimate dead animals, and that's where you're like, what's going on?
Either way, he's fucked up.
Yeah, he's totally fucked up. I have another question.
Okay.
Because we got two stories here. We got the frog dissection story. And then we got the no budget for supplies story.
Well, which is also the Belding bribing Bliss to stay here story.
Yeah. Right. Cut to the chase.
Yeah. Okay.
Where is the budget to pay for all these frogs?
Especially the second batch.
That's what I'm saying!
Yeah, the first batch was probably in the budget, but we're just... Well, guys, let's be honest here. Morton paid for those frogs out of his own pocket.
He's willing.
I need their death.
Also, about the supplies, we forgot to mention in the first office that Miss Bliss got a slide projector, that it came along with a very revealing photo of Mr. Belding and the Miz doing limbo.
Yeah, presumably naked,
Club
right?
Med.
Right,
Yeah.
definitely naked limbo, which would be a lot of crevices to look at.
Right.
Also, where's the budget for all this Miss Bliss stuff she's doing?
Well, I think Belding is reallocating from other teachers in order to...
All he does is says no to everybody. It's not even like
Right. It's like they had no budget and now he's got some.
Well, okay.
I guess he's
You mean, where is he getting this budget? Like the $10 whole that a globe costs?
Well, and again, having worked at schools, there's money.
Yeah.
They're just not going to give it to you. So.
I'm just saying, let's not act like he's giving her diamonds here. It's just a globe, people.
No, it's a diamond globe.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. That explains.
It's one of those globes you can open up and there's booze inside, too.
Yeah.
I love those.
Now that I want one of those someday. Yeah, totally. Like in my office, it's gonna be awesome.
I also, during this cafeteria scene, was really lamenting the quality of the background extras in these Miss Bliss episodes.
Well, yeah, especially because one of the things that this show does that Saved by the Bell never did, which is not be afraid of non-frenetic pacing. So we consistently have scenes in the cafeteria where it's like, here's what the teachers are doing, here's what the kids are doing, and we don't need to cut back and forth. We could just go from one to the other and stay in this one location.
But we also have like a range of characters.
Yeah.
Like there's the adult world and the kid world, which we never have.
Right.
Later.
So while the adults are talking about how suspicious Belding is being,
And Belding is being really gross. I just want to say that he has the line, "Your need is my need."
yeah, oh yeah.
After that fuck
Wink,
subtext
wink.
and requisition forms and those limbos, Belding's being a total horned up gross ass.
Yeah.
So over at the kids' table, Zack and Mikey, apropos of nothing, are asking Lisa for advice on the best way to approach a woman.
Where's that coming from?
I don't fucking.
Yeah, no, it's they need to be talking about something because then Nikki comes up to interrupt and does her best.
Almost one, which I think is racist.
Sure could be now. Sure.
I not being racist myself took it as a she's not quite a teenager yet, so she's a girl, not a woman.
She's premenstrual. Zack has he has a calendar of every woman's premenstrual cycle.
I don't think Elisa's premenstrual. I think she gets it.
You think so?
I really
don't. I don't want to go down this road. We really.
What about
don't.
Nikki? Is Nikki menstruating?
Nobody's menstruating yet.
Well, I think it's worth pointing out that already at the tender age of whatever this is, Zack firmly believes that the best way to approach a woman is with a lie.
Oh yeah.
And Lisa encourages it, right?
Yep, and he learned nothing from his encounter with Karen in the very first episode.
No, he never does.
Nope. That's what I'm saying. This is consistent. At least they keep some things the same.
We haven't watched The Honeymoon in Vegas yet, and I've never seen it, but I'm sure that it involves Zack lying about stuff a lot.
You are 100% right. And the details and magnitude of those lies will kill you.
In retaliation, she creates a petition to stop the dissection.
In true Jessie fashion, she really is bad at reading her audience because they're really not interested in signing this petition. But in their defense, they do agree to cover for her if she wants to cut class.
Yeah.
But instead she says, screw you guys, I'm going to go talk to Miss Bliss.
That's the other thing. Is, again, maybe this has changed, but I feel like Nikki can just get her parents to write her a note.
Yeah,
I don't know that she has parents.
That's fair.
That's true. We've yet to really meet any parents in this series.
I'm fine with that.
Later in the science lab, Miss Bliss confronts the eccentric chemistry teacher, Mr. Morton, about Nikki's situation. She requests that Nikki not be forced to participate, but Mr. Morton refuses, saying that if she wishes to pass the class, the dissection was mandatory. Miss Bliss tells Nikki to listen to her heart and do what she thinks is best.
So Miss Bliss comes in to argue on Nikki's behalf, and she tries to make him understand why Nikki doesn't want to do this, and he still cannot even fathom the fucking notion that someone doesn't want to dissect a frog, and tells Miss Bliss that Nikki has to participate in order to pass the class.
Does anybody come out looking good in this episode?
No.
Not really. I mean, I guess Miss Bliss is okay.
Mm-hmm.
I guess
she doesn't really do anything wrong. We also find out in this scene that Nikki's last name is Cohen.
I'm not gonna remember that. I'm telling you right now.
And I probably will because I am sad.
You go right ahead.
So then, in the hallway, Miss Bliss breaks the bad news to Nikki, but Nikki sticks to her guns even when she's told that she'll fail if she doesn't do this dissection. And she's like, what would you do, Miss Bliss? And she gives her, like, vague, pandering, listen to your heart and your conscience and all of that.
I would do something British with computers. It's like a future, Zack Morris.
She's like, cheerio, hot conscience.
My suggestion to everyone is don't tell kids to follow their heart. It'll only lead into bad things, like kids following their heart. You know what I would do if I followed my heart when I was a kid? Not homework, I can tell you that much right now.
What would you do, David?
I'd be watching TV all day long. It depends on what age I was, but let's just say none of it would have been productive work.
So Nikki's takeaway from all of this is to run off into a commercial break with a croaking box of frogs.
Oh man, it's like Schrodinger's cat with these frogs in this box. Are they real? Is there real frogs in there?
Schrodinger's box of frogs.
Yeah, they don't exist until you open the box and see that they're there.
There's holes in the box.
Then it'll probably be like a toads or something. Remember how they didn't get the lizard that they said that they had?
Yeah. They're actually like dissecting Gila monsters.
Oh shit, those are expensive.
Later, while the class is taking their test, Miss Bliss is called down to the principal's office. She puts Zack in charge of the class, and he goes power hungry and begins to scold the class for misbehaving.
So after commercial, we're back in Bliss's class, and Belding's like, "Yo, Miss Bliss, quit doing your fucking job. I want to come give you stuff in the principal's office."
Yeah, that was really weird. You can't call the teacher to the office during class.
And everyone's like, ooh.
Yeah, that was the first ooh on the show.
Yeah. And then, in actually a rather clever bit, she puts Zack in charge.
I disagree.
Yeah, I agree with David.
I think this was not clever at all because it made no sense. Why does putting Zack in charge do anything?
Because he's a white man and he's going to inherit the earth as his birthright as a financial schemer.
He's a born leader.
Because he goes mad with power.
Was her plan? Was to let him go mad with power?
Right.
Yeah, she knew that if he was mad with power, he wouldn't be fucking around.
But he's not doing his test, though.
Well, none of them are doing their test, and the class ends in like 30 seconds.
This fucking drives me nuts. That this always happens. There's something going on in class, and then there's an interruption, and the class just ends.
Yeah.
Like, why does class always have to end during the team?
Yeah.
It's never important to the team.
Filler.
Right.
It's because filler.
So we could get the joke by Zack about how he didn't dismiss them.
That was a non-joke. That was one of several non-jokes.
Well, wait. If we were just gonna flag everything that was a non-joke, then
Let's do it.
That we need to go back to the beginning of our podcast and start over.
Also, if the class was going to end in like a minute, why couldn't Mr. Belding have waited?
Yep.
Yeah, or why couldn't Miss Bliss have just been like, alright, stop working on your test, class is almost over anyway.
Yeah.
Or just, you guys have one more minute of class, and then I'll go to the office.
Right. In this scene, we learn that Mikey's last name is Gonzalez.
Is it?
Yeah.
Wow.
Getting a little too overzealous there, eh, Zachy?
Meanwhile, in the principal's office, Miss Bliss learns that Nikki released all the frogs into the wild. Because Mr. Belding is scared of losing Miss Bliss, Nikki escapes with a single warning. However, this upsets her science teacher, and the point she was trying to make is ruined.
And Nikki's kind of like, why the fuck didn't I get punished for that?
Yeah, that's weird that she's so disappointed about not getting punished.
Well, I feel like that's kind of a Jessie thing, too, where she feels like she's making like a big stand and was going to get punished for it and is disappointed no one cares.
That's kind of the thing where there's people who protest something and their goal is to get arrested by the end of it. Like,
Yeah.
Right.
that's kind of the badge of honor for them, is that they get cuffed protesting whatever it is they're passionate about. Why does Mr. Belding think going easy on Nikki would impress Miss Bliss? I mean, I guess not, because Miss Bliss had talked to her, but it was obvious that Miss Bliss wasn't in favor of what Nikki did. So Mr. Belding should have at least given her detention or something. Like, I think Miss Bliss would have been on board with that.
Oh yeah, which is what Miss Bliss says later in the episode. She's like, Nikki at least deserved a detention. I like the fact that Belding is meddling in the educational development of this student just to keep Miss Bliss at the school.
Yeah, is this supposed to be like the origin of when Mr. Belding stopped being an authority? It was to kiss up to Miss Bliss.
Yeah.
And then later he just starts kissing up to Zack.
Yeah, well, he found out that he actually couldn't, be an authority figure. That he'd rather be somebody's friend.
Next week,
Yeah, those 80 tree-hugging types sure got spat on.
we go to Miss Bliss's class, and Tina comes in all drama queen about things that Mr. Belding won't give her now. And then Milo comes rolling on in with a brand new VCR for Miss Bliss, compliments of Mr. Belding.
A brand new 1989 VCR.
9 VCR, which costs probably like $600. Tina doesn't quite come out and say it because this is still like a kid's show, but she more or less insinuates that Bliss is banging Belding at this point.
I feel like Mr. Belding is going into like a psychological experiment phase, and so I think Mr. Belding is like, well, if I just favor one teacher, they're just going to self-destruct and like
Yeah.
each other apart.
Oh, that actually would be a clever bit of administrating on his part.
I like when Tina gets all pissed that Miss Bliss is getting all this stuff, and she accuses her of filling out the requisition form.
Yeah.
Maybe they are blowjobs.
That's what I'm getting at.
Mm-hmm.
And then at the very end of the scene, Milo comes in carrying a box he says contains encyclopedias, but I guarantee you from the way he's carrying that box, it does not in fact contain encyclopedias.
He's really strong.
Are you calling him a liar?
I'm calling the artifice of television a liar.
I agree with that. Also, so is Milo like in charge of the AV club? Carrying in a VCR?
As part of his role as like the custodian manager, he's like distributing this stuff out to Miss Bliss as Belding brings it in. It's her VCR, it's not the AV club's. Then we're back in the hallway, and Zack is pretty much just harassing Nikki for not being a serial killer because she doesn't want to like savor the enjoyment of killing an animal.
This shit is dark.
She asks Screech, and Screech says like his friendship with Nikki or the feeling of a frog intestine in his hand or whatever.
He wants to
And
kick a kidney. He wants to drop kick a kidney and it gets a laugh.
That was Mikey that wants it. But once again, like, I'd be okay with the notion of Screech not siding with Nikki just on the grounds of, like, I like science and I am going to enjoy doing this and learning, but he has to, like, be gross and serial killer-esque about it, too. Where it's like, he just wants to feel the body parts in his hands. It's not just like, no, I'm going to enjoy learning from this.
It's like they've just dialed up like some stereotypes about boys to 11, where it's like, boys like gross stuff, and boys like, frying ants with a magnifying glass, so of course they want to like feel the intestines of a frog slip through their fingers.
Like, as is often the problem with shows, sitcoms, there's no mid-range.
Yeah.
It's like two extremes.
Right. Yeah, everything's broad. And this is where we also find out that Lisa's not too wild about doing the dissection, but she'll do it for the sake of her grade. Mm-hmm. And that's Lisa's take on things.
I stand corrected.
That night, Nikki visits Miss Bliss' house and she tells her that there may be an alternative to dissection. She tells Nikki about a computer program that simulates a frog's anatomy. She thinks it's a great idea and goes home satisfied.
So then we go back to the Miss Bliss house, and Nikki shows up at Miss Bliss's house for some reason.
That's not normal.
Well, Zack already did that.
It's happening, yeah.
So what? It's still not normal, you guys. I'm going to keep my head throughout this whole Bliss season.
And to be fair, she was invited by Miss Bliss.
Not normal.
I don't know why she was invited. I don't know why this scene had to happen at her house.
Right.
Because they want to feel like they made a good investment when they built that set.
Yeah.
I guess it has been 2 episodes since we've seen it. But yeah, she was invited at this point.
You know what would be cool is if Miss Bliss just hung out in her bedroom, and then like everyone climbed in the window.
And like people would walk in and she gives them finger guns as they enter.
Hey! Orders some pizza. So this is where we get the very briefest snippet of an intelligent discussion of the issue, where Miss Bliss makes the point about medical research, and Nikki counters with a good point that frog dissection of middle schoolers in school isn't quite the same thing as scientists conducting medical research.
And to be fair, I don't know how much I got out of dissecting a frog when I did it. Like,
I probably could have gone through my life without ever having done it and would have turned out the same.
Yeah, and I didn't get anything more than like if I just read about it or whatever, in a textbook.
What about if you had a computer screen?
Yeah.
Computers are our future.
Miss Bliss whips out a floppy disk, Waka Waka, that contains a computer program that she says Nikki can use in lieu of the dissection.
This show's all about computers, isn't it?
Right? This is like leading the tech charge in 1989.
They're like the potatoes of home technology.
Yeah, so this is the second episode in a row where the whole plot has been about some like delivery item that everyone has to deal with.
Miss Bliss confronts Mr. Belding about his unexplained kindness to her, and she tells him about the letter that he found.
Back to the office, and we're gonna wrap up this little Belding Bliss subplot. Bliss asks Belding why he's being such a suck-up, and she badgers him until he admits that he found a letter. And between the two of them, they use the word woo a lot. And then...
Right?
No,
There's
not
no
even-
woo guy anymore.
There's not even that kind of a woo. It's like a, they woo you, woo who, I'm wooing you. I don't want them to woo you.
And they get laughs, and they don't deserve the laughs. But they only get like 2 laughs. It's such like awkward, stilted laughter. Like one guy feels obligated.
Yeah. And then Miss Bliss rationally explains that the reason she had a letter from that academy in her mailbox was because one of those teachers that left was writing her a letter, because this is 1989 and letter writing was still a living method of communication.
Ghost Rider. Ghost Rider.
Why didn't they just text each other?
I know, or send an email or something.
Why didn't you just send
FaceTime.
emojis?
New school, thumb up.
That
and
was
then
the
Milo.
letter. She just opened it up and it was a big like,
It's a
thumbs
picture of a thumb.
It was a drawing of potatoes and then eggplant. And a arrow.
However, the next morning, the teachers arrived to find the frogs missing once again.
And so then Milo comes in and whips out the pun that Mr. Morton is hopping mad.
Oh, back.
And in the next scene, we find out that he is mad because Nikki has run off with his second batch of frogs.
That's her, like, fool me twice.
Right? Like, maybe you should have locked up those frogs.
Start watching these shit. Damn.
Keep an eye on them, at least.
But that all turns out to be a false premise, because then Nikki just turns up again with the box full of frogs and says that off camera she's learned to respect the differences of others, and that the only frog she's released was hers.
Wait, this was like the most complex, rational reasoning ever on this show. Where she's like, I didn't want you guys to do this, but then me not allowing anyone to do it made me just as bad as the people I was trying to stop. You're like, that is very sophisticated.
Yeah.
It was. I would have liked to have maybe had a scene where Miss Bliss helps her with that realization, instead of the scene where Miss Bliss gave her some bullshit advice and she stole the frogs. Because we don't really, there's nothing we get that explains why Nikki had this realization.
And again, let's not ignore that the real solution comes on a floppy disk.
Right.
Yeah, and that's where, like, he doesn't eat the Mr. Martin, what is it? Morton doesn't acknowledge it one way or another, right?
Yeah, he just kind of trails off.
Yeah.
Well, he's like, well, that's fine, Nikki, but I'm going to have to fail you. And then Miss Bliss is like, oh, but you could use this computer program. And I guess that he's okay with that.
I feel like his bloodlust wouldn't allow him to be okay with that.
Yet, our man of science here does not know what a computer is. Are you sure you want to touch that, Einstein? You may get a bad virus, because the computer says you may need to upgrade your brain to be compatible with its newest software.
Mr. Morton is outraged and immediately blames Nikki. Nikki enters the classroom with a box of frogs and explains that she freed hers, but the rest of the class still had the right to dissect the frogs. She tells them she would be instead interested in doing the assignment based off the computer, and Mr. Morton couldn't argue with her logic.
Yeah, I hate this guy. Does he never show up again?
No, we never see him again,
Thank
don't worry.
God. Fuck this guy.
I also love, not unlike Milo's empty box of encyclopedias, that apparently whatever frog delivery company they're getting these frogs from just puts them in a cardboard box and then, like, stabs holes in it with, like, a scissors.
Oh my God.
Like, there's no, like, uniformity to the holes in the box. It's just, like, I think Morton went out into a swamp and grabbed them and threw them in this
Well,
box.
of course he did. You didn't get that from this episode?
That's how he could afford the second batch, I
And
guess.
he stabs the holes in the box with the frogs in them very willy-nilly because he likes the, like, random danger of it all.
Well, it's like the Schrodinger's cat, where he does that, but he doesn't know which ones are dead until he opens the
Yeah.
box.
I bet when he's sitting at the desk, Morton has like a scalpel and he's stabbing around his fingers, like front, back.
Like an alien.
Yeah, like all the cool guys ever.
And that's pretty much the end of that.
Finally, Milo comes in with a cart full of surprise that Mr. Belding bought for her, saying that they were ready for the taking.
Yeah, and it's like, all this stuff was requisitioned for her class, and it's like, how much of it would be useful in other non-history classes?
What does the science teacher need with a globe? Unless there's booze in it.
Seriously, I learned no more about frog dissection than I did reading some anatomy textbook. Then again, it did make Miss Bliss begin to look like cutting-edge drama, which was a step up for many of our noticeable stars who made it on to the next installment. Moral of the story? Respect people's wishes to tear shit up.
I hate it when I'm wrong.